I'm very late to the party on this one, but just yesterday I was finally able to see the movie Weapons. Here are my thoughts on it. Hi, my name is Nathan, and I talk about a lot of movies on this channel. If you're new here, down below in the comment section, share what you thought of the movie Weapons over on my channel. I have more content like this. Check those out once this video is over. And if you enjoyed this video, click the like button, be sure to subscribe because that really does help a lot. And with all that said, let's just get straight into the good. Before I actually get into more specifics and what I actually thought about this film, I think it's important to know I saw this movie. It came out August 8th, so I want to say 3 weeks after release. So I was quite a bit late to the Weapons party, and I went into this movie not knowing much about it. I knew Julia Garner was in it, and I'd seen one trailer in the theater, but not much else other than that. I knew the premise involved a bunch of children going missing. And so I tried to go into this movie knowing very little as much as possible because the director of this movie directed a film called Barbarian back in 2022, a film that I have not seen, but I've heard that it's a film that you want to go in knowing very little about it. And so I feel like that's the same approach I took when watching Weapons. I meant to see this movie back during the first week of school and things like that, but then timing just didn't work out, and I have a math quiz tomorrow on the day that I'm shooting this video. There's a math quiz that I have the next day, so I had to do some studying real quick, but I wanted to make the time to shoot this review and talk about the movie Weapons because I thought that this was a very good movie. And keep in mind, this film debuted with a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes with a good amount of reviews that were already in at the point, and at the moment that last I checked, it still has like a 94% or something like that on the website, and people have just been calling this one of the best horror movies of the year and things like that. And I would say this year is a pretty good year for original horror movies. This is the type of movie that I want more of, original stories where they let creators tell the stories they want to tell, like Sinners. I really dug Together, I really dug Companion this year. It's kind of been a really great year for horror movies, but I will say I didn't love it as much as most people did. We'll get to more of that, and I'll explain why in the bad section. But when we're just talking about the positives of this movie, I think this film has just a very strong first 2/3. And what I mean by that is the movie doesn't really have a 3-act structure in the traditional sense. So when I say first 2/3 of the film, I mean, all these moving parts, all the setup was really, really, really strong. And I was sitting there in the theater thinking, this might actually be one of the best of the year with how strong the setup was. We'll get to more of the payoff later on when we talk about the bad, but it has a very strong setup and it's executed. What I mean by it's not a traditional 3-act structure is that it's told in kind of different sort of little bits in the film. Like every 15 minutes it'll cut to a different character's perspectives on the same exact events. So what the movie does is it repeats the same time frame, same events several different times, but just told from the perspective of a different character. So it starts off with one character and then the next character and the next character, and these are characters, most of them at least, that are actually have interesting perspectives. You get a parent of one of the children who's gone missing, you get the teacher of the children, and that was just a very strong way to set up all these little moving parts that all culminate in the 3rd act of the film. Or, like I said, it's not really a 3-act structure, but it culminates all in the finale of the film. And the setup very effectively builds interest and intrigue. It kind of gets straight to the point as soon as the film starts, where a bunch of kids go missing, run outside of their homes, and with this mysterious, like they're stretching their arms out and things like that, and you don't particularly know what's going on, but it keeps you engaged in the mystery going on all throughout in the first 2 acts of the film, where they're trying to introduce all the characters and everything. You're following them along, stranger occurrences happen around certain characters, and you're kind of wondering, like, what is going on here? And it keeps that intrigue, like, for most of the runtime of the film. In which case, you just get a film that manages to be an edge-of-your-seat film by definition, where you want to pay attention to all these little details and how all of this is going to intertwine later on in the film. And it's just a nice edge-of-your-seat experience when watching this movie. And Add to that, I think the performances here are very strong. Julia Garner's in here as our teacher, and it kind of shows her sort of grief and how she's processing this. She doesn't particularly know what's going on here. You got a father of one of the children that is extremely broken after his child went missing and is still processing the events. And this is a film, then the first two acts actually kind of explores characters processing the events of what's going on in the film. It's not on like the front end of the film or anything, but it is present in the movie. It does play into a large chunk of it and what happens later on in the film. And like I said, with all these strange occurrences happening in the film, manages to intertwine little themes in it, some really good performances, intrigue, thrills, all of that is very present in the movie. And something that I didn't know going into this movie is that the movie actually has quite a bit of humor into that. We'll get into a lot more of the humor once I move on to the bad section of this video. But the movie's humor overall, it actually kind of worked. The trailers, if you watch the trailer, it would make it seem a lot scarier than it actually is. I didn't think this movie was scary. Like I said, we'll get to that more later on. But I thought the movie's sense of humor actually worked quite well. All that said, I did not think this movie was perfect, nowhere near a 100%, and probably not going to be in my top 10 of the year by the end of the year. It isn't even in my top 10 of the year right now, so let's move on to the bad. And going into the bad here, I think inherently it was a little bit jarring when I watched this movie because the praise and everybody going on about it as one of the best horror movies of the year and things like that, we're treating it as a legitimate horror movie. But I didn't think this movie was all that particularly scary. It was very edge of your seat in the first 2/3, and this is the section where we'll mostly be talking about the finale and what they actually do with the plot and things like that. And I might get into spoilers. If I do get into spoilers, I will put a spoiler warning in the title of this video, most likely when I go back to post it the day that drops, or something like that. But I might be going into spoilers here, so spoiler warning ahead. I just didn't particularly think this was a scary film. It doesn't have to be. Like, the hard reality is, whenever I go out to see horror movies, I don't particularly get scared of them. But I think a horror movie should also be thrilling from beginning to end. And this movie was thrilling for the first two acts, or 2/3 of it. And the final third kind of felt a little bit, it kind of lost it a little bit. And here's where I'm going to get into a little bit of spoilers here. The jokes, and there were so many jokes, so many comedic elements thrown into there that undercut the tension. And I would say this movie, when I saw it in the theater, my theater was laughing out loud more times than I thought that they would, because the movie is quite humorous. There's a sequence where Julia Garner, the teacher, is sitting in her car, and a woman comes out walking all weird with what looks like to be a sharp object, which is scissors, and she's like walking all dangerously. She goes up, approaches the window, and stops there and stares at it, and it's this really tense sequence. And then she like just walks past it, and the entire theater burst into laughter. And I didn't go to a theater that was empty either. Like, this movie was 3 weeks into release, and I still went into a half-full theater when watching this movie. And everybody laughed at that. And then you hear the car door open, she's in the back. And it builds up tension yet again. And then she, like, cuts her hair, and the theater starts laughing again. It undercuts these tense moments to do a joke. And I felt like that was a problem really throughout the entire film. And I mean the entire film. Where it builds a sense of tension in the first two acts, which is something I prominently mentioned in the good part of this video, and in the final act, or the final just sequence, there's a final little sequence in the movie, just turns into basically Looney Tunes slapstick comedy, where basically what happens is Josh Brolin and Julia Garner walk into the house where they presume the kids are, and I'm assuming you've seen the movie already. I was going to explain some specifics about the kid's aunt and things like that, but I'm assuming you've seen it. And there's a sequence where a couple of people attack Julia Garner and Josh Brolin, and when Josh Brolin's fighting his guy, he legitimately like punches the guy. He gets knocked out for like 2 seconds, then he gets back up and then he punches the guy, and then he gets back up and then he punches the guy again, and he gets back up and then runs and then he flips him across the table, and he gets back up and then he flips him across. Like at this point, the theater is just like laughing out loud, like it's a comedy. And a horror movie can have comedic elements. For example, a film like Scream, where it's very meta, very commentary on what's going on in the film. The characters overtly know the tropes of horror movies in that film and plays that to a little bit of a funny extent. So a horror movie can have comedic elements in it. But by the time you got to the third act of this movie, it felt like more of a comedy movie with horror gore aspects thrown into it rather than a horror movie with comedy aspects thrown into it. And especially what they do at the very end of the movie with the ant and all the kids running, and they like they like tear the ant apart limb by limb and things like that, which was kind of cool to see, but it wasn't played like it was this like really satisfying payoff. It played as a joke. So there's a point in time where the kid that is being attacked by his parents is in the bathroom. He does the whole ritual game spell thing with the stick and the blood and the woman's hair, breaks the stick. All the kids run after the woman, and for about 3-4 straight minutes, there's sequences of the ant going like like running outside like a Looney Tunes character, and the kids just chasing her, and then as the people like look on like, what on earth is going on there? So there will be sequences where like, and for 3 minutes straight, like the guy's mowing the lawn, and then off in the distance you see a woman running crazy like this, and a bunch of kids are chasing her, and then at this point the entire theater's like actually like bursting out into laughter. And it felt like the tense tone of the first 2/3 of it, for the most part, all built up to kind of what was a slapstick finale and joke. And that's just what I wasn't a big fan of. Also, when they start, like I said, it was a very intriguing mystery in the first 2 acts. And when they start to reveal the answers about the ant and everything in the film, I just thought that it kind of felt a little bit like it wasn't as interesting from that point on. Particularly because they showed the perspective of the kid, and there were a bunch of lapses in logic. For example, the kid is like, I understand he's being threatened by his aunt, but he's been like sleeping in this house soundly for like a month, according to the film, and he doesn't bother to do anything about it, and he doesn't seem that terrified as a kid, like these strange things going around him, and does not report it to anybody. And I understand he's being threatened, I know, but like for a month, really. But not even that. It's just like at the beginning of the movie, they showed kids running out of their homes and motion sensors going off around, and the location that the kids are at is in a house next to other houses. It's not in like an excluded house without any cameras or anything. So there were some lapses in logic where like, wait, if there might be cameras on the other house that set off motion detectors, they might immediately tell the police where they are. And so if you're into like extreme horror, and if you've been hearing stuff online about how scary this movie is, it's not particularly very scary. It has more humor than you might think it is. You have to know that going into the film. But with how negative I was in this review for a large chunk of this video, you might interpret that as that like I didn't like the movie. I liked this movie. I thought it was good. I had a good time watching it. But I just didn't think it was like one of my favorite movies of the year or anywhere close to that. But that's not to say it's bad at all. I enjoyed the film. I just didn't... I think going into it, if I knew that it had more humorous elements, I might have had a better response to it. So that's why I'm telling you, you gotta go into this movie knowing it has more humorous elements. But I don't even know why I'm saying that, because I made this a spoiler review. I spoiled a whole bunch of things. So I don't even know why I'm saying that right now. But I guess that's the way that you have to see this movie anyway. So overall, I'll give it a B. And a B is not bad at all. I enjoyed this movie. A B is still a good score to me. I just didn't love it like most people did. So down below in the comment section, share what you thought of Weapons over on my channel. I have more content like this. Check those out right now. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end. I'll see you in the next one.